Hi, I'm Ron Bateman, the Sheriff of Anne Arundel County. Welcome to your Anne Arundel's Most Wanted program, a program where we showcase wanted criminals, highlight open cases, and look to you for tips. You, concerned citizens, that share my same goal, and that's keeping our communities safe. You'd be proud to know that your calls have allowed us to put handcuffs on thousands of criminals. So sit back, set your DVR, or grab a pen and paper, and help do your part in catching criminals. You're watching Anne Arundel's Most Wanted. Guest on our show, Corporal Amy Megath from the Annapolis Police Department. Welcome back to the show, Amy.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Who'd you bring for us?
I've got 3 today. The first one is Deborah Ann Brown. Her date of birth is August 7th of 1970. She's an African-American female, 5 foot 5 inches tall, weighing 220 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Her last known address is 1120 Frederick Douglass Street in Annapolis. She has 4 open warrants: a warrant for armed robbery, first and second degree assault, reckless endangerment, use of a firearm in a felony or violent crime, handgun on person, and attempted theft, and 3 additional warrants for thefts. The first warrant stems from an incident on February 1st when officers responded to the 1100 block of Madison Street for an armed robbery that just occurred. The adult female victim reported that her relative, Deborah Brown, asked her for money and then grabbed her wallet. They struggled over the wallet, and Brown took the wallet, but another family member was able to get it back from Brown. Brown pulled out a handgun and pointed it at the victim, then fled the area on foot. The other 3 warrants stem from shoplifting arrests in 2015. Brown failed to appear in court on these charges, and the warrants were issued for her arrest. The second subject we have is Juan Rodriguez. His date of birth is November 29th, 1979. He's a Hispanic male, 6 feet tall, weighing 160 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He also has a tattoo on his right leg, and his last known address is 54D Queen Caroline Court in Stevensville. He has an open warrant for theft less than $100. Officers responded to calls at 260 Solomon's Island Road for a theft that just occurred. The loss prevention supervisor told officers she had a suspect in custody for stealing clothing from the store. Juan Rodriguez left the store with a pair of pants hidden inside the waistband of the pants he was wearing. Rodriguez was charged with theft and failed to come to court for this charge. The third subject we have today is Christina Bessie Bellinger. Her date of birth is April 29th, 1986. She's an African-American female, 5 foot 4 inches tall, weighing 135 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Her last known address is 244 10th Street, Southeast in Washington, D.C. She has 2 open warrants, one for theft less $100 and the other for traffic violations. In the theft case in November of 2013 at 10:53 a.m., an officer responded to Safeway at 1781 Forest Drive for a shoplifting. The manager saw Bellinger pushing her own personal cart down the aisle of the store. Bellinger was putting items into a bag which was concealed by her coat. The manager confronted Bellinger and called the police. Bellinger had concealed $85 worth of items in her bag. The officer arrested her, but she failed to appear in court on these charges. Also in November of 2013, Bellinger was pulled over and issued several traffic citations. Bellinger came to court and was found guilty, but failed to pay her fines, and another warrant was issued for her arrest.
Great. You know the drill, folks. You know the whereabouts of any of those individuals. Do not approach them. Instead, call that number on the screen, 410-222-1490 or 911 24 hours a day. Keep those calls coming in. We love them tips, and they are definitely paying off. Amy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, guys, hold it down.
Now for another regular guest on our show, Sergeant Melissa Hout from the Maryland State Police Glen Burnie Barrack. Welcome back to the show,
Hi,
Melissa.
thank you, Sheriff.
Who'd you bring for us?
I have 3 for you today. Our first wanted subject is David Jacinto Chavez. On September 25th, 2015, around 8:45 p.m., troopers were patrolling southbound 97, approaching Route 32 when they observed a vehicle traveling 20 miles per hour below the posted speed limit and driving partially on the shoulder of the roadway. The vehicle continued driving in a slow and erratic manner for approximately 1 mile when troopers performed a traffic stop on that vehicle. Trooper Copper of the Maryland State Police Glen Burnie Barrack made contact with the driver, identified as David Jacinto Chavez, a Hispanic male with a date of birth of 12/28/1991. Trooper Copper observed several empty cans of Coors Light as well as an open case of the same beer littered inside of the vehicle. Trooper Copper performed standardized field sobriety testing with Chavez, and as a result, he was arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. Chavez is wanting for failure to appear in court on January 20th, 2016 for this DUI charge. Chavez is a Hispanic male. He's 5 foot 4 inches tall, weighs approximately 135 pounds, and his last known address is on 5th Avenue in Glen Burnie. Our second individual wanted today is Keith Edwin Jones, Jr. On November 27th, 2015 at 11:30 p.m., Trooper Klein was patrolling in the area of Mountain Road at Catherine Avenue when she observed a white Ford Explorer drift over the center line into oncoming traffic. Trooper Klein performed a traffic stop on the vehicle and made contact with the operator, Keith Edwin Jones, Jr. Trooper Klein noticed Jones' speech was slurred, his eyes were glassy and bloodshot, and she could smell the odor of alcoholic beverages coming from his breath. Trooper Klein asked Jones to perform standardized field sobriety testing, which he was unable to complete successfully, and Jones was arrested for DUI. He failed to appear in court on February 8th for that offense. Jones is 6 foot tall, approximately 170 pounds, and is 28 years old. His last known address is McKinsey Road in Severna Park. The third wanted person is Trey Markel Baez Brown. On September 5th, 2015 at 6 a.m., Trooper DeMoss responded to a report of an accident on Ferguson Road at Baydale Drive off of Maryland Route 50. Upon his arrival, Trooper DeMoss discovered a vehicle had rear-ended a second vehicle and the driver had left the scene. Trooper DeMoss contacted the owner of the abandoned vehicle, who cooperated with the investigation and advised him who the driver was. Troopers made contact with Trey Markel Baez Brown, who admitted to being involved in the accident because he was using his cell phone, and for unknown reasons after that, he left the scene. Trooper DeMoss issued several traffic citations to Baez Brown, including one that required he appear in court. Baez Brown is wanted for failing to appear in court on January 6th for charges related to the accident. He is also 6 feet tall, weighs approximately 170 pounds, and is 23 years old. His last known address is Littis Pool Court in Annapolis.
Very good. Folks, you know the whereabouts of any of those individuals. Do not approach them. Instead, call that number, 410-222-1490 or 911, 24 hours a day. Melissa, thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
And now for another regular guest on our show, Lieutenant Ryan Frazier from the Anne Arundel County Police Department. Welcome back to the show, brother.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Who'd you bring for us?
I brought 3 for you today, Sheriff. Our first one is Mr. Melvin Lee Shepard III. Mr. Shepard is approximately 5'11". He weighs 155 pounds, and his date of birth is February 13th, 1986. On February 6th, 2016, at approximately 2:30 in the morning, our officers responded to an address on Baltimore-Annapolis Boulevard for the report of a stabbing. Upon arrival, our officers met with the victim, who stated that he was stabbed by an acquaintance that he knew. The victim stated that he allowed a homeless acquaintance to stay in a residence with him, and he advised when he fell asleep in a reclining chair in the living room, he was suddenly attacked by the suspect. He said that he felt a warm rush going down his back, and that's when he realized that he had been stabbed. The suspect then fled the scene. Detectives took over the investigation and quickly identified the suspect as Mr. Melvin Lee Shepard III. Shepard is currently homeless, but is believed to be in the Glen Burnie area. Shepard is currently wanted for the attempted first and second degree murder of the victim in this case. Our second subject is Mr. Dwayne Dave Salmon. Mr. Salmon is approximately 5'8", and he weighs approximately 160 pounds, and his date of birth is November 7th, 1979. On January 3rd, 2016, officers responded to the area of Russet, Green West, and Oxbow Place for the report of a domestic violence and assault. Officers met with the victim, who advised she was getting a ride to church from her ex-boyfriend, Dwayne Salmon. While in the vehicle, the two began arguing about a cell phone payment. During the argument, Dwayne attempted to suffocate the victim. He then stopped his vehicle, forcibly pulled the victim from the car, threw her to the ground, and began strangling her with both hands. After strangling the victim, Mr. Salmon fled in his vehicle. Currently, Dwayne Salmon is wanted for first and second degree assault of his ex-girlfriend. The third suspect is Anthony Kenneth Gordon. Mr. Gordon is approximately 5'9". He weighs 185 pounds, and his date of birth is December 25th, 1993. On February 6, 2016, at approximately 2:46 p.m., our officers responded to a jewelry store which was located inside the Arundel Mills Mall for a theft. The employees there advised the officers that a suspect entered the store and inquired about a Rolex watch that was in a display case. When the employee told the suspect that they needed his identification to remove the watch from the display, the suspect produced a Maryland ID card and was handed the Rolex watch. Once the suspect took possession of the Rolex watch, he fled the store and was observed running towards the parking lot. Officers observed the suspect enter the passenger side of a red Honda Accord and was last seen going westbound on Arundel Mills Circle. The employee and witnesses were able to positively identify the suspect as the person pictured and listed on the Maryland identification card that he left at the jewelry store. The suspect was identified as Anthony Kenneth Gordon with a date of birth December 25th, 1993. Mr. Gordon currently has warrants for theft.
So let me get this right. So in order to see the watch, he actually had to show his ID, which he produced, his real ID, left at the scene, and stole the watch.
That's right, with his information on it.
So he definitely gets the dumb criminal file this month. We did one last month, but Anthony Kenneth Gordon, he's top of the list this month.
Yes, so I think you should start a very dumb criminal award of the month, and he would get that one.
I agree. Folks, you know the whereabouts of any of those individuals. Do not approach them. Instead, call that number, 410-222-1490 or 911 24 hours a day. Lieutenant, thanks a lot, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
And now for those subjects wanted by the Anne Arundel County Sheriff's Office. Let's see. Our first subject, that is going to be Denzel Warren Sanders. Now, Sanders was on probation for his prior theft $1,000 to $10,000 conviction, for which he was sentenced to 7 years incarceration. All but 18 months was suspended with the agreement he would comply with the 2 years supervised probation. Sanders failed to report as directed, failed to provide verification of employment, he failed to get permission from his supervising agent before changing his home address, failed to pay for evaluation and testing, and he failed to make himself available for alcohol and drug evaluation, testing, and treatment. So today we are looking for Denzel Warren Sanders, who's a 36-year-old white male with a date of birth of November the 11th of 1979. He's 5'7" tall, weighs 180 pounds, and has brown hair and blue eyes. His last known address is 202 Baylor Road in Glen Burnie. That's in Glen Burnie Park. Our next subject, that is going to be Corey Leroy Brooks. Brooks was on probation for his prior firearm possession with felony conviction. He was sentenced to 5 years incarceration, of which all but 7 days was suspended. And he was placed on 2 years supervised probation. During the term of his probation, he was arrested for trespassing and disorderly conduct, and he was issued traffic citations for driving on a suspended license and driving without a license. As a result, Brooks's probation has been revoked and a new bench warrant was issued. About the traffic charges, he failed to appear for court on January 20th and a bench warrant was issued. The trespassing and disorderly charges, you betcha, he failed to appear for court on January 27th and yet another bench warrant was issued. So we are looking for Corey Leroy Brooks, who's a 29-year-old black male with a date of birth, February 27th, 1986. He's 6'1" tall, weighs 150 pounds, and has black hair and brown eyes. His last known address is 410 Secluded Post Circle, Unit K in Glen Burnie. It's right off of Elverton Road. And our last subject, that's Elizabeth Gale Sheffield. Sheffield is wanted on 2 warrants for passing bad checks and theft. Between January 21st and February the 14th of 2014, Sheffield wrote multiple checks to BJ's Wholesale Club and Lauer Supermarket, obtaining hundreds of dollars worth of goods from both stores. She's gracing your screen today because she has not stepped up to make it right. So we are looking for Elizabeth Gale Sheffield, who is a 52-year-old white female, the date of birth of September the 27th, 1963. She's 5'5" tall, weighs 165 pounds, and has brown hair and brown eyes. Her last known address is 1237 Hill Creek Road in Pasadena. Remember, folks, you know the whereabouts of any of those individuals. Do not approach them. Instead, call that number on the screen, 410-222-1490. Now, I want to thank a few people that allow this show to happen every single month. First, my buddy behind the screen there, Mr. Dale Boyer. I want to thank from my office, Lieutenant Jennifer Gilbert Duran. Also want to thank our county executive, Mr. Steve Shue. Also want to thank the chiefs of police, Anne Arundel County, Tim Altamari, and Mike Pristu from Annapolis City Police Department, and my friend, the Superintendent of the Maryland State Police, Bill Palazzi. Remember, folks, let's keep Anne Arundel County safe. I'm Sheriff Ron Bateman, and we will see you next time on Anne Arundel's Most Wanted.